So after the Bretton Woods system collapsed, different countries made different choices on which exchange rate system to adopt. Some countries adopted soft pegs to the US dollar, which means that they kind of like re-established the Bretton Woods system without the possibility of converting US dollars in gold at a fixed price, but still they decided to anchor the value of their currency to the value of the US dollar, letting the value of their currency fluctuate between bands. So very similar to Bretton Woods. Some other countries just decided to have the value of their currency to fluctuate relatively freely compared to other currencies. So if we think about the euro experiment, so there were many countries with different currency. They decide to have a fixed exchange rate against one representative currency, which is the euro. But then once that's been done, and after that these countries have delegated their monetary policy, so the power of changing the money supply to the European Central Bank, this new central institution for Europe. Then we have the euro currency, and the euro currency fluctuates freely against all the other currencies in the world, including the US dollar. So we have, a range of variation in exchange rate regimes across the world. Choosing an exchange rate regimes will present trade-offs to countries. Clearly, if a country is small, or if it's or if it has trade as a significant fraction of its total economy, then there are large risks associated with variation in the exchange rate. Think about a country that is small, for example, a Caribbean island, and depends heavily on exports of raw material to one country, say the United States. Well, then you want to avoid large appreciations of your currency compared to the US dollar, so that would basically prevent you from exporting. So in these type of situations, there are benefits from adopting a fixed exchange rate regime, and for example a soft or a hard peg. What is a hard peg? A hard peg means that I completely give up on my domestic currency and I accept foreign currency, say the US dollar if I'm a government in a Caribbean island, as legal currency. So that's what Ecuador has done. Ecuador is an extremely oil-rich country, and it exports oil, in particular to the United States, and not only to the United States, but as we know, oil is one of those commodities that is always quoted in US dollars. So since their economy is so dependent on oil, they just decided that they were adopting the US dollars as their official currency. And that ended up substituting their local currency. So for economies like this, in which either exports or imports are extremely concentrated with one partner country or in one specific commodity that is quoted in a given currency, then it totally makes sense to have a fixed exchange rate regime. Let's not forget, though, that if we have a fixed exchange rate regime, then our central bank is going to conduct monetary policy to keep the value of our currency with respect to another currency at a constant level. This means that the central bank doesn't have the power of using monetary policy for other objectives, for other targets, because it's committed to keep the value of our currency constant against the value of another currency. So we know, or we should know from our macroeconomics classes, that there's a relationship between money supply and the inflation rate. In particular, it is accepted that at least in the long run, if I increase as a central bank the money supply by a lot, I will have an impact on inflation. Inflation will go up. There's also an empirical relationship, which is maybe less stable, but it's still present in the data, between money supply and GDP. In general, increases in money supply in the short run are accepted to produce increase in GDP growth, again, in the short run. So once a central bank tightens, not tightens, decides to anchor um, its money supply to providing a constant exchange rate against another currency, it loses the power of using monetary policy to pursue uh, objectives of price stabilization or output growth. So if you're a country in which inflation is out of control for whatever reason, then it might be a big mistake to choose a fixed exchange rate regime, because you want to have your central bank able to reduce the money supply to stop inflation from keep growing, okay? Or if I'm an economy in which clearly there are signs of a spiral trend of deflation, I might want to be able to have my central bank free to print money or to increase the money supply to stop this trend. If I'm choosing a fixed exchange rate regime, this is not going to work, and these are the main trade-offs that countries face when they have to make a choice for their exchange rate regime.